what you shouldn't do is attack them and say, you've got a freaking problem and I'm putting you in a center right now and you've got to get help. Because first of all, if you're an alcoholic, you're going to get to that rock bottom moment, okay? You're going to end up doing something that you finally just wake up the next morning and say, I am sick and tired of living like this. Yeah. What you can do is talk to them and say, do you want to talk about this?
Welcome to the Age of Lions podcast, a platform and community dedicated to bringing purpose, strategy, and calling to kingdom-minded people who are 50 plus and excited about their next chapter. Here's your host, Mark Clement.
Hey everybody, welcome to episode 32 of the Age of Lions. That was our very special guest today, Amy Speropoulos. You're in for a real treat as we get into some really challenging subjects around the idea of addiction and what that looks like in adults our age, and how to deal with that if that's somebody in your family or that you're dealing with in your relationships. Before we get into that, I just want to ask you to remember to subscribe, like, follow, comment on any of the channels that you're listening or watching on. The subscriptions really help us grow and reach more people. It helps the algorithm feed this to new people who are searching this topic. And so thanks for supporting us in that way. And thank you for checking in and tuning in every week. We're just blown away by the response, blown away by the number of people who are checking it out every week. And we just want to say a real personal thank you to you for that. Before we get into the episode, I just want to share a little bit of a personal thought with you. We've talked a lot about sticking with things and fighting through challenges as we get older, and that will to get up and keep going and to reinvent ourselves and all the things that go along with that. And I've been kind of going through my own personal journey with some challenges over the last few months. Back in the summer and fall, when I, as you've heard me talk about endless many times about working out and going on this big hike and all the things, somewhere in there, I don't know if I injured myself or maybe kicked up an old injury, but I've hurt my knee and I've got to have some surgery on one of my knees. And in fact, I think I might have to have it on both knees because they're both hurting in kind of the same way. I just haven't had the second one checked out yet. But I'm just sharing that to say it's a meniscus tear. It's not the worst thing in the world. It's just an irritant. But I will say that it really does mess with you when you're trying to do a thing, you're on a track, you've kind of doubled down, you've put in some discipline, and then, in this case, a physical injury happens, or maybe it's a setback in your finances, or maybe it's an emotional thing or a relationship change, or, whatever it can be. But those things really do affect us. And I found myself on, many a day over the last few months processing that, just thinking about, gosh, I've just gotten going in this. I'm having success. Things were great. And then this huge sort of obstacle pops up, and now it's going to be, surgery and rehab, and I won't be able to work out for a while, and I got to start that over again. Your mind starts to play all those games with you, and you kind of start to spin out. But at the end of the day, I just keep coming back to, the benefits of all the hard work that I'm doing. And even though this is going to be a challenge and I got to get through it and start over again, to some degree, it's worth it because of the fruit on the other side. And so I'm just sharing that to say that, this isn't just a bunch of talk. I'm going through this stuff too. I've got challenges too. I'm dealing with setbacks and issues and all the things that go along with aging. And but I want to ask you to pray for me as I go through this over the next couple of months, and let me know if there's something I can be praying for you about, or we can all pray together for, because we are a community, and it really does matter to me that we're in this together. We're fighting for each other. We're not doing it alone. We're overcoming these battles together. So I'm just sharing that. I hope that encourages you to A, let you know you're not alone, B, let you know there's light on the other side and we can fight through it. And I hope that encourages you a little bit today if you're going through a challenge of your own. So anyway, thanks for letting me share that. Excited about Amy Speropoulos today. Amy and I did not really know each other. We connected through some mutual connections online. It turns out that she went to the same high school that I did. She graduated with one of my brothers, so she's a few years younger than me. And my father married her parents, or her mom and her stepdad, and all this kind of thing. Hello, Moses. Moses is joining us. And so we had all this in common, but she's had a remarkable journey as she's dealt with alcoholism and addiction in her life. And she's going to share a lot about that story the challenges that she's kind of overcome and the process she's going through. And I found it incredibly encouraging, because the truth is, if we're not going through that ourselves, we likely know somebody who is. It could be a spouse, it could be one of our grown children, it could be a relative in our family, or somebody we work with, or a friend. And she talks a lot about how to deal with that, how to process with it, how to encourage and help them, what to do and not to do. Like, it's some really amazing things, and I learned a ton talking to her, and I know you will too. So get ready for a really challenging and uplifting conversation with Amy Speropoulos. Hey, Amy Speropoulos, how are you?
I'm doing well. How are you, Mark?
I'm great. I'm so glad we're able to finally connect. It's good to meet you. We don't really know each other. We have actually turned out a lot of friends in common and family in common, but it's so good to have you on here. I'm excited for our conversation.
Thank you so much. Yeah. Isn't it funny how God works?
It really is. We were talking about that a little bit offline earlier, and how it all has just kind of worked out. And I'm excited about what we're going to talk about today. Before we get into any of that, I'd love for you just to kind of introduce yourself a little bit, tell people a little bit about you, your family, and your work, and then we'll kind of go from there.
Perfect. Okay. So my maiden name is Spears. I grew up in Pelham, Alabama, went to Pelham High School, and graduated from there, then went on to the university. I was that kid who knew they wanted to go into TV when she was 2 years old, sat in front of the TV with the little toilet paper roll and acted like I was Barbara Walters. So ended up doing that, and moved to Memphis for a job. Actually, had never been to Memphis, Tennessee, and ended up staying, meeting my husband, finding a great church home, and going into TV. So that's kind of the Reader's Digest version, as I like to say.
And you're with the Salvation Army now, right? Isn't that what you're doing? I am
with the Salvation Army now, yes.
And what do you do for them?
So I do communications and development for them. It was kind of a God thing, like everything else in my life. After doing 30 years in TV, I was kind of thinking about doing something different, and praying for God to open a door. And, it's not always on our time. And so he wasn't ready, I guess. And so,
or maybe
until
you
he was right. Exactly. Yeah. And so, he did finally open a door for me at a small Christian school in Memphis. And I was there for 3 years. And, then, they came to me at the Salvation Army of Memphis, and it just really turned out to be, a real great thing, because a lot of what we do at the Salvation Army of Memphis is right in line with things that I've been doing most of my adult life. Okay. I have to be honest, I don't know a lot about the Salvation Army. All of us I know have heard of it, and we all know, what it is, but... You want me to give you the Reader's Digest version?
I'd love just because I'm sure other people might have the same question. Like, what exactly is it that y'all do? Absolutely.
So everybody knows Mark, the Salvation Army, for ringing the bells. And I really should have had a bell with me. I'm sorry, I don't. But that's what everybody knows us for. But what they don't know is that the Salvation Army is an international movement and national movement, and they're across the country. And it's a really, here in Memphis, they mimic the needs of the community, just like they would in Birmingham, Alabama. So here in Memphis, we operate over 3 campuses. One is the Purdue Center of Hope. That is where I work. That's where the admin works. And that's where we house 120 women and children who otherwise would be living on the streets. The women come from all over the country for our program because they can stay there up to 2 years for free. Wow. They can get alcohol and drug classes to get clean and sober. They get full wraparound services, therapeutic classes. A lot of the women, and it is just women and children at this particular facility where I work. A lot of the women are going through domestic violence situations. So it's just a beautiful organization. But even more than that, we're a Christian organization. So we are allowed to pray with the women, and we're allowed to, give them the hope that we know that can come through a relationship with Jesus Christ. So we also operate the Kroc Center, which is a full service gym. The Kroc Center, it's KROC. It's one of only 26.
I'm actually familiar with that because my wife used to be in that fitness industry.
Oh, very cool.
And that was a client of hers.
Yeah. Okay.
I forgot about that. Yeah.
Yeah, so the widow of the McDonald's, Joan Kroc, actually started only a handful of those centers. One of them is here in Memphis, and again, a great facility, but it was strategically placed in an area in Memphis where it was needed. On Sunday morning, we have church at that facility. We have majors and lieutenants and officers within the Army that preach and teach, and that's what they do at that facility. And then we have a third component, Mark, that is called the Adult Rehabilitation Center. And that is where we house men who can stay there and live there and really get what they need to get back into life. We also operate a thrift store. It enables them to get involved in a work-study program, and they can stay there and work on getting their lives back in order. So as I'm sharing this with you, you're probably thinking, just reading a little of my history, oh, well, this really was a God thing. Because, I've always been a believer my whole life. And I just, at the heart of what I do, the whole reason, in fact, that I went into TV was to help people. Yeah. I mean, Kip Tyner, who is in Tuscaloosa and still very active. I remember when I first started working with him at WCFT in Tuscaloosa right after graduating, he was like, "You've got a heart to tell people's story, and I think that's what you need to do." And at the time, I had a very strong Southern accent. So I was like, well, I'm probably not going to do well in TV because I can't afford to get a voice coach. But you know what? If that's what God wants me to do, then I'm all for it. And you know what? Clearly, that's what God wanted me to do because I did it 30 years. And so that's a pretty, it's a pretty good run in TV. Yeah.
Yeah. That's awesome. That's really cool. I'm glad you shared that about the Salvation Army because I didn't know that. So that's really cool.
It's a great opportunity for folks to serve their community. I mean, we just wrapped up one of the biggest seasons for us, to be honest with you, is Christmas. Sure. So 5 weeks out of the year, when you see us ringing the bell, all of the money that we raise stays, like all of the money we raised here in Memphis goes to the Purdue Center of Hope. So every dime and dollar that we raise goes to keep the lights on where we house these women and children. And I'm sure the situation is very similar there in Alabama and across the country and across the nation. It's a great organization. And that's another thing. It's so well branded. But the little bit of the issue is sometimes people are like, well, I just know you ring the bell. So what else do you do? And that gives the exact in for me to tell exactly what we do.
Right. And it's interesting that you said every city's version of it is an expression of that city. So you're responding to specific needs. Birmingham may not have a version of a Kroc Center or the women's thing.
Absolutely.
It might have something different. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. And so very interesting. So an interesting story about that. So we in Memphis are celebrating 125 years this year, which is unheard of for a nonprofit. Yeah. But again, God has sustained us through all those years. But the Purdue Center of Hope was originally designed to be a shelter for men and a shelter for women, an emergency shelter. Okay. The mayor came in and broke ground and said, hey, would you reconsider and be a shelter, an emergency shelter for women and a shelter for women and children? Because right now in the city of Memphis, there's no place for women and children to go. And a lot of cities are grappling with this right now because they have shelters for men, they have shelters for women, but quite honestly, children are considered a liability. Yeah. And they have to have a whole new spectrum of rules and regulations and licenses and blah, 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 all that. So, but that's what we said. Yeah, you need shelter for women and children. We'll do it. In Birmingham, they may not need a shelter for men and, for women and children. They may need just a meals program, or they may need just, a clothes closet, or they may need, so that's why, in each city, it's so important when the Salvation Army comes in, for them to, be there a minute and look at the dynamics of the city, what is needed, and how they can do to help the situation.
Okay. Well, that's really fascinating. Well, there's so much we're going to talk about today. You have a lot of things you can get into. We could just talk about you kind of changing careers later in life, because we talk about that a lot here about what are you passionate about and what you feel like God's calling you to. And hey, just because you're 50 or 60 or whatever, like, hey, you can still do something new and God can use you and wants to use you.
Right.
So we'll get into all that in a second. So let's just jump in with what we do with all of our guests. We always like to start with a little bit of a lighthearted look at aging. And so we usually ask the question.
I love it.
At what
Have
point
I had any Botox? Are you about to ask me that? I'm
Oh,
just
no,
kidding.
I would never.
Totally kidding. Totally kidding.
I was born at night, but not last night. Yeah,
You did better.
I'm not.
You're a good Alabama boy. You know not to ask that. Oh my gosh, that's
I'm
funny.
married. I know not to ask
you're
those kinds of
married.
questions.
Exactly.
You don't ask that. You don't ask if they're pregnant.
That's
those are things you stay away from.
That's exactly right.
But no, the first thing we always ask people is, at what point did you have sort of the aha moment or the realization or the wake up call or whatever that was like,
Yeah.
I'm doing the best I can. I'm active. I'm this, I'm that, but I am getting older. Like it is happening. I can't deny that it's happening. What was that moment for you where you kind of went, I'm entering a new chapter?
Oh my gosh. I really think that there's so many. I mean, there's so many that I've had throughout the years. I mean, I will tell you about one pivotal point in my life. But being in TV, I had a lot of moments like that, to be honest with you, because
I can imagine.
I mean, I really did, because I was 50 and still working in TV. And, when you're 50, and there's 20-year-olds out of college, you kind of have, okay. I will tell you one time was when I was at a station, and after every newscast, I did the mornings, and after every newscast, we came in the conference room and we went over the newscast with a media consultant. And we were on this huge, huge screen, and it was HD.
Yeah.
And we were like, oh my gosh. Every woman in the room was like, what is that? I mean, and there were 20-year-olds, there were 40-year-olds, there were 30-year-olds, every single wrinkle, every single, all that. So, so that was an interesting moment. But really, in all seriousness, a moment for me was probably when I had a bicycle accident. And it was several years ago. I can't tell you when it was, but I do know my husband I actually met my husband in TV. He's not on air, but we actually met at Channel 3. And I kind of felt like our lives had come full circle, because he was the director of sales at the last TV station that I worked at. And I had my own show, and, it's really unheard of that you have your own show in television. I mean, it really is. And I had been given another opportunity, and that was one of those opportunities when God said to me, you're not ready to leave. I'm not ready for you to leave TV. So it was an hour-long show in the morning, and it was great, and I really loved it. But I've always been a health fanatic, so I was riding my bike, and weirdly enough, I ran over, and this is just a weird thing. And I was telling somebody about this the other day, and they were like, well, did you turn around? And I said, no. I ran over 2 snakes on my bike ride.
Oh, okay.
And a normal person would probably think, maybe I should go home, but not me, because I'm like all or nothing. I'm like, nope, I'm finishing this exercise. I'm finishing it. So as I'm wrapping up, it was 2:30 because my daughter gets out of school at 3. So as I'm wrapping up, I'm coming around a curb, and a car hits me head on. And now understand, my mother was a great helicopter mom, because I never had stitches. I never broke a bone. I never had anything. And the car hit me head on. I literally remember seeing the grill. And then I remember waking up on the ground. And this neighbor comes running out there, and he's like, oh my gosh, are you okay? And I passed out for a minute, and then I woke up, and I'm like, just call my husband and just tell him that I've been in an accident. And then this woman comes up, and she's like, I said, call my daughter, because I'm supposed to meet her from the bus, tell her that I've been in an accident. Just don't tell her what happened. Just say, no, I'm sorry. I said, just tell her mommy will be late. So I'm hearing her say, hey, Haley, your mom's been in an accident. And I'm like, oh my God. And so the guy calls my husband, and he just is like, what? And the guy was like, yeah, she's been hit by a car. And so, of course, like I said, I've never had any issues at all. So they take me in the ambulance to the hospital, and I'm so funny. I'm like, listen, y'all realize that I have to MC an event tomorrow. So I'm going to need y'all to make this quick. And they're like, yeah, no, I don't think you're going to be at that event tomorrow. And I'm like, what? And he said, I think that you might have broke some things. Well, turns out I did. I broke 5 bones in my leg, and it was quite traumatic because I was on bed rest for 4 months.
Oh, gosh.
And the doctor legit told me, he was like, you cannot stand up or you will need surgery. And I don't know if you can tell this, but I'm very headstrong. And I'm very like, no, are you sure? But you know what? I listened to the doctor and I did what he told me to do. But I'll tell you what I now know happened. And I've shared this with everybody. I was not listening to God at that point in my life, and he wanted to get my attention. And I'm very stubborn. And he wanted to get my attention, and he got my attention because for the next 5 months, I sat in my bed and I got real close to Jesus. And gosh, it's so funny. This was like a long time ago. I didn't even think I'd get emotional about it, but I got real close to Jesus because part of my story, and we'll talk a little bit about this later, but addiction runs in my family. So when the surgeon walked in, I immediately was like, hey, I'm an addict, so I don't need you to give me any pills. Now, pills are not my issue, but I'm not stupid. And he was like, well, I need you have to take pills. I mean, you've broken 5 bones in your leg. I don't think you can go through this without pills. And I said, well, I'm going to have to talk to my sponsor about that. So needless to say, I just really did a lot of talking to Jesus during that time. And, and I'm not saying, I'm not going to get all weird and say, God made me have that accident or whatever, but there's not a doubt in my mind that God had been trying to talk to me, but I was not being still enough to listen because I am very high strung. I go. A lot of that has to do with TV. I mean, my husband has told me throughout the years, he's like, especially with these new jobs, he's like, Amy, you don't have to operate like breaking news. But Mark, when all you've done is operate like breaking news for 30 years, it's very hard to reverse that.
Sure.
So it's not so hard to reverse that, though, when a surgeon tells you that if you get out of your bed and stand on your leg, you're going to need surgery. So I would advise you not to do that. So beautiful story. My sponsor was here every day. I actually took those pills just as directed, which she still thinks is amazing. I think it's God because pills just were never my thing. I don't like feeling like that. So I made a full recovery. I've not had any issues from that, but that was kind of my aha moment that I'm not quite as young as I used to be. Amy, you are vulnerable too. And but I mean, I had a lot of other moments like that too. I mean, I don't want to go back to TV, but I mean, I was in it for so long in my life. I mean, we had a lot of moments when we were sitting in live trucks and we were pretty sure that we were about to get jumped, and we left the scene, and only by the grace of God we were. And actually, it's interesting because that was one of the reasons my husband really wanted me to get out of TV, and I really wanted to get out of TV too, because I don't know if you remember, but several years ago, there was a reporter and a photographer in Virginia that were shot and killed while going live. And it was a disgruntled employee that actually came on and put the whole thing on Facebook. Right around the time that happened, Scott just said to me, that's my husband, he said, this is a dangerous city. Yeah. Y'all are going out in a live truck. I was mornings, so I got to work at 2:30 in the morning. And y'all are going to these scenes. Sometimes there's police there, but many times we're there long after the police have gone, and so it just, we couldn't carry guns for obvious reason. So, there were a lot of times when I had moments that I thought, this might not be the best idea, but I grew up in an age and stage in life where you didn't quit a job. You didn't leave a job. You didn't, I'm learning about all this quiet quitting stuff. So foreign to me. It doesn't even make sense. I mean, it literally does not make sense. And having 3 teenagers, I'm going through that whole thing with them because it's like a whole genre of language and a whole thing that I sometimes don't understand. But that was just the stage and that's the time that I grew up. That's what my mother said. You never quit a job unless you have a job. You never, you never call in sick unless you're literally dying. I mean, when I had my own show, Mark, I'm not even kidding you. I remember clearly coming to work with the stomach flu, and I was sitting on the set and we were live, and I had a garbage can next to me, and in between the commercials, I would throw up. So, in that industry, you don't come to work and you might be replaced. I mean, I know that sounds really harsh, but I'm going to be honest with you. It's the truth. Now, don't hear what I'm not saying. Television was very good to me. Television was excellent to me. I had a wonderful career. I am beyond grateful for the career that I had because it introduced me to so many people. I was allowed, and I remember that I interviewed Governor George Wallace in Tuscaloosa after the schoolhouse stand in the schoolhouse door. I interviewed him when he actually apologized to the people from the University of Alabama, those students. So, I mean, I could tell you, one of the questions that I get asked all the time is, what was one of the best stories you do? And I'm like, how long do you have? Because I've done so many great stories. And again, that's going back to, the reason that I wanted to go into TV. That is truly the reason that I wanted to go into TV, was to help people and to tell stories for people that would get their word out there, they'd get their message out there. And ultimately that would lead to more understanding about what struggle they were going through or what struggle their business was going through and things like that.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, you mentioned about addiction. So let's talk about that for a minute, because one of the reasons I wanted to have you on was after learning about your story and your testimony. I wanted to talk about that because under this umbrella of aging with purpose and aging intentionally and all things that really all of life happens under that, addiction, whether it's something personal we're going through or somebody we know, maybe a spouse or a child, even an adult child or younger, or a family member or friend or whatever, most people have been touched by that somehow, and affected by it. And, it doesn't necessarily go away because we get older and wiser and more mature. In fact, it might get worse in some cases. So I'd love to hear I'd love for you to share with the listeners a little bit about your story and the addiction part of your story and how that's affected you.
Yeah, absolutely. So I grew up in a really great household. I mean, my mother was fabulous. My dad was fabulous. And we were a middle income family, and nobody really knew that there were any, that there was any drinking going on in my house. And that was, in the 70s. And that was something that we just really didn't talk about. We went to church every Sunday. I went to Vacation Bible School. I mean, all the things. And
I was going to ask you, where did you go to church when you lived in Pelham?
When we lived in Pelham, oh my gosh, of course you were going to ask me that.
Well, for those listening, I'm asking because we both grew up and went to the same high school.
Actually, Indian Springs.
Okay.
Indian Springs is where we went to church. Yeah, because that's where my mother and my stepdad got married there. We went to Indian Springs. Okay, so
my dad's church. Okay.
Yes, exactly.
You just, for context, we were saying earlier that you and my middle brother, Matt, are the same age.
That's correct.
In the school together. So, okay.
That's right. That's exactly right.
My dad married your
That's right.
Yeah. Okay. So
my mom and my stepdad, 36 years ago, they had their anniversary yesterday.
Right.
So yeah,
which we didn't know when we met. That was just something that's come
Isn't that
up.
funny? I know. Yeah.
But anyway, I didn't mean to derail you. I was just curious.
No, you're fine. So, so my dad was very much like me. He was, a people person. He loved everybody he met. He worked for the Internal Revenue Service, and he always worked out. He was a go-getter. He was a Green Beret and one of those guys that jumped from the helicopter. I mean, he was just amazing. I mean, he was just, he was amazing. But he had a drinking problem. And so I learned really early on about the disease of alcoholism. And when I say that, I like immediately when I started noticing things in my dad, I started researching what this was. And, in those days you could drive around with, he drove around with a Dr. Pepper can and it was filled with vodka. We would go to the lake. It was filled with vodka. But I mean, the thing is, and he was never violent ever. I mean, he just fell asleep. But I mean, we knew he was drinking. We knew he was drunk. Sure. And it quickly became a thing in my family. And my mother, I mean, I don't know. I mean, she might have had a glass of wine, maybe, I don't know. But she did the best she could to hold things together. And so as his drinking progressed, my sort of research progressed because I really wanted to understand what was making my dad act like this. And, really, to be honest with you, now looking back, what could I do to stop it? Which now I know there was nothing I could do to stop it. So anyway, fast forward, back to my story. So I graduated from Pelham High School, I went to a junior college for 2 years, then transferred to Alabama. And by the time I transferred to Alabama, my drinking career was well on its way. And, it's so funny because the only reason that I didn't do other substances is because I was too scared that I wouldn't get a job in TV. And I was like, well, they'll give me a job if I drink, but they won't give me a job if I do, other things. Yeah. So that's why my drug of choice was alcohol. So, even in college, because of alcohol, my relationship with my dad, it took a really bad turn. And so my parents ended up divorcing and, my dad remarried, and I have my stepmother is amazing and my stepsister is amazing. And, my mom, but it was a really dark time for my sister, my youngest sister and I, sure. and my mom. And, I just, it was rough. And so when I went to Alabama, I'm pretty positive that my mother knew I drank. In fact, I was very vocal about my drinking, and, it kind of came to a head several years after that when she and my sister both planned this intervention, which, by the way, did not go over well. So note to self, if you're a family member of an alcoholic, you really need to pray and think long and hard about how you do an intervention, because there are certain ways to do it and there are certain ways not to do it. That was just my experience. But by the time I got to Memphis, my drinking was strong. And I was an everyday drinker. However, I don't know. I had a small circle of friends because in TV, people always make this mistake that you have all these friends and you have the people that you work with and then you have another circle and then it's your husband and your kids or whatever, and this was, my husband and I had just gotten married. So because we both worked at the station, we had a select group of friends. So, I don't ever remember anybody per se saying Amy has an alcohol problem with the people that we hung out with, but everybody knew I drank a lot. Yeah. And so, when I started at, another station working early mornings, my drinking really moved like to another level because I was working very early mornings, and I would come home and I had a newborn and I had a little one, but that's when I drank. And interestingly enough, we were members and are still members at Hope Presbyterian Church. And I was part of a women's Bible study. And we, after women's Bible study, we would go to restaurants and we'd get a few glasses of wine. And probably what they didn't know, although they know now, is that when I went home, I just continued drinking. Yeah. So many times when my husband came home from work, I was out. We've got 2 little kids at the time. And then we went on to have a third child, our youngest daughter. And so little by little, the drinking was just continuing. And so I started going to counseling and I started seeing therapists. And it was so funny because, I would see these counselors. And by the way, my husband suggested, he was like, I think you might have a problem. I think you need to go see somebody. And I was like, okay, well, sure. Okay, I'll go see somebody. And I'd go see somebody and they'd be like, well, how often do you drink? And see, I'm a liar in my drinking. Okay. I'm an addict, keep in mind. So I'm not going to tell you how much I drink. So I'm like, I have a glass or 2 of wine a night. And he's like, well, then I don't think you have a problem. Well, if I had been being honest, Mark, then he for sure would have said, yeah, you need to either check yourself in somewhere or you need to start going to, a program or something. But that's what we do in our alcoholism. We lie, we cheat, we say things we don't mean, we manipulate. And that was my disease. And so my last drunk was March 4th, 11 and a half years ago. And I had all 3 of my children in the car. I went to a place that only served alcohol because that's what I did. I didn't go to Subway. I didn't go to those places anymore. I only went to restaurants with friends that served alcohol. It was 7 minutes from my house. When I was done, I put my 2 daughters in the car seat and my other daughter was 7 at the time. And it was a 7-minute drive from my house to where we were. And I passed out 3 times. And by the time I got home, my little girl, my oldest daughter, was so worried. She called my husband and I got so mad at her. I threw a mug across the kitchen at her and almost hit her in the face. By the time my husband got home, I was passed out. I woke up at 10 o'clock at night and I came downstairs and he was like, I'm done. I'm done. And, actually, now that I'm thinking, he had never told me that before. He said that to me, and I vividly remember really hearing him and knowing this is it. Yeah. This is it for you. And so the next morning, like a good worker I was, I woke up and I went to work at 2:30 in the morning. I remember walking in and talking to my colleague, who's still a very good friend. I was like, I've got a problem. And he was like, Amy, it's going to be okay. You can get help for this. It's going to be okay. And he too is a believer, and he sat there and prayed with me. And, in that moment, I can't even tell you what I was thinking, but I was thinking this was it. Drinking was no longer fun for me. In fact, it quit working a long time ago. I was no longer, and I used to be the life of the party when I was drinking, and I was no longer the life of the party. I had started having shakes, which I kind of played off to, I'm working at 2:30 in the morning. I've had too many coffees, whatever. Sure. I had several episodes that I won't bore you with the details, but it just, I knew at that moment that it was done for me. And even then, I went 2 weeks without alcohol, and I kind of, to be honest with you, I really thought, maybe I can get this on my own. And my husband came downstairs one day and he was like, you realize that our church has a program for people who have a problem with alcohol? And I did. And he was like, I'm going to need you to go to a meeting. And I was like, fine. Begrudgingly. I was not happy about that.
Sure.
Didn't know anything about how to get sober. I really thought, even with all that I had researched with my dad, I thought if I have a problem, I can stop this on my own. But I can tell you this about alcohol. If you have a problem and you are an alcoholic like me, there is no stopping it on your own. My willpower was not strong enough to get me sober. And when I tell you I have a strong willpower, I have a strong willpower. Yeah. I mean, I can, if you tell me to eat healthy, I will eat healthy. If you tell me to exercise, I will exercise. But that was not enough to get me sober because the chains of addiction had grabbed me so hard and had me chained around the neck. And, this is something that I share often when I'm asked to speak to groups of sober men and women. Alcoholism is a disease. And just like a person with diabetes has a disease, they have to take medicine. A person that is addicted to alcohol has to take medicine. And my medicine today is getting involved in a program that teaches me that I am not in control of life, but God is in control. And if I allow him to lead and guide and direct, he will do it, but I have to give up the reins. And I have to stop thinking that I can do things on my own. I cannot do things on my own.
Yeah. That's such an incredible story. What do you think it is? It sounds like you had a big moment at the end with the ultimatum from your husband, the fear I'm sure you had of like, what might I have done to my kids if we'd had a wreck?
Oh my gosh.
All that
Absolutely.
stuff.
All that.
But I'm sure I imagine there were other things along the way that weren't quite 100%. Enough to get your attention.
100%.
So what do you think was different at this marker, this point, that made you go, okay, I have to do this differently than maybe you had done before?
Yeah, I think I was sick and tired of being yuck. I mean, I didn't like myself. I literally did not like myself. I mean, I looked in the mirror and I hated who I had become. And, I was just miserable. I mean, I was literally, I just was miserable with my life. I was miserable with my kids. I was miserable with my husband. I was miserable with everything. And the sad part about that was that I have a really good life. And that's part of my testimony that I share with people. When I talk about this, I'm like, don't be fooled by what you think alcoholism is, because what you think alcoholism is a little old man or little old woman living under a bridge with a brown bag that knocks on your window and asking for money. Yeah. That's not where alcoholism took me. Alcoholism, I was still working. I had never been fired from a job. I had never lost a husband. I got a speeding ticket, but I had never been sent to jail because of a DUI. I had never killed anyone because of drinking alcohol. And those are what we call in the program that I'm in, your yets. And they say yets because if I go out again, my alcoholism is still there and I will do those things. I'll tell you also what was an aha moment for me was I had probably been sober 5 years. And the people that I'm in the program with, it's just a loving group of people. I mean, they come from all genres of life and they're just great people who want to get sober and they want to stop drinking. And I was still working in TV at the time. And a lot of people came in and out of the doors of the 12-step program that I'm involved in. And a lady came in and she shared how she really wanted to get sober. She needed a sponsor. She didn't know how to do that. And she had come to several meetings. And we're kind of a close-knit group of people. And so I knew her and I knew a little bit of her story. And so I was at work one day and we were sent to cover an accident where a car got on the interstate going the wrong way and hit a semi trailer, and both of them exploded. Well, as I'm sitting there, you know, a lot of times the police tell you things that you can't report. And of course, we would never report a victim's name unless we got confirmation from the family and all this.
Sure.
Well, long story is I found out that it was that woman. And she had her granddaughter in the car. And it just slapped me. And I was about 5 years sober at the time. And I just thought, and I really did. I said, Lord, if you allow me to do your work and give you the glory, I will never drink again. And, you know, it's interesting because my life kind of changed at that point in the aspect of the next job that I got was my own show. So I had not been real transparent about my drinking, but I started talking about my drinking and my recovery on TV.
Yeah.
Because the Holy Spirit literally said to me, you are not going to be afraid to tell people about your story.
Yeah.
In fact, you're going to tell people your story, and you're going to give me the credit for getting you sober. And when you do that, I will protect you no matter what. If your boss doesn't like it and he lets you go, I'll find you another job.
Yeah.
If people don't like it and they turn their backs on you, I will find you another job. And I started being very transparent about my struggles with alcohol.
Yeah.
And I started being very transparent about my struggles with post-traumatic stress, PTSD after I had Haley, my first daughter. I had massive PTSD. I didn't want to hurt anybody, but man, I was ready to walk out of my house. And I remember my mom, bless her heart, she was like, it's just the baby blues. And I was like, Mom, this is not the baby blues. This is not the baby blues. And I called a friend of mine who happened to be a nurse at the time. And she was like, yeah, you have postpartum. I mean, you need to get on something now. And I did. And so I started being very vocal about those two things in my life. And you know, I've never been sorry for that.
Yeah.
Ever.
I'm so glad to hear you talk about that. We actually did an episode a couple months ago on the power of your story. And,
wow.
And we really encourage people about that because, as you well know, whatever your thing is, in this case, alcohol for you, other people have their own things, but the enemy just wants to give shame, and he wants to isolate
100%.
us, and he wants to say, don't tell anybody,
100%.
And the reality is, when we're open and honest about the things that we're struggling with, almost all the time, other people are oh yeah, me too. Or, oh yeah, I know somebody. Or, oh yeah, I don't do that, but I do this. Like actually, we think it's going to harm or hurt or whatever. It actually builds trust. It builds relationship.
That's right.
It builds intimacy in our relationships around us. It's so powerful when we do that, and especially to do it publicly like you have done. I can imagine the people, especially during that season when you had your show, and I'm sure you had very dedicated fans who loved you for your honesty and loved you for your transparency. You probably heard stories all the time about how it helped people, I would imagine.
All the time. And I mean, we would have speakers come into town that were talking about alcoholism and the disease of alcoholism and how it impacts the brain and addiction and things like that. And they would share with me about, thank you for telling this, because you have no idea how many people are struggling with something. And I'm glad you said that, Mark, because it doesn't just have to be addiction to alcohol or addiction to drugs. I mean, it can be a shopping addiction. It can be a sugar addiction. All of us, we all have things that we struggle with. And so, I just really believe that now I tell people, I remember when I first got in the program that I'm in now, I remember my sponsor then saying, one day you'll be grateful for your addiction. And I was like, you're crazy. I'll never be grateful for my addiction. I am beyond grateful for my addiction. Beyond grateful. Because let me tell you something. My children know all about addiction. I had to research it because my dad was going through that. My children know all about it.
Yeah.
And you know what? If one of them needs a program, they know who they can talk to.
Yeah.
If one of their friends needs a program, they know who they can talk to. And I'm so grateful for that, because there's such great help out there, and you don't have to be living under the bridge with the brown bag. I mean, you can be like I was and living in the house with the husband and have the good job and all those things. What I know today is that I was a highly functioning alcoholic that hadn't gotten to that point in my disease yet. Thank God that he protected me. And that was another thing when I walked in the kitchen and my husband told me, I'm done. I'm absolutely done with your drinking. If you don't get this under control, I'm leaving you and I'm taking the kids. That was another thing that I knew at that point. God had given me so much freaking grace.
Yeah.
He had given me so much grace. But you know what? It was about to run out. I mean, I needed to know that I needed help.
Yeah.
I needed help.
Well, you mentioned about highly functioning, and I'm sure, like I said earlier, most of us know somebody. If it's not ourselves or a spouse, it might be one of our kids. It might be a family member that is going through something like this or whatever. I want to ask you, what advice would you give them if you've got somebody in your life, they have an issue, whether it's pills or alcohol or whatever, there's something going on. What's the best thing they can do as an outsider? You were kind of talking about interventions earlier, but what can they do to help besides pray for them, which is obviously super important?
Of course.
What can they do?
Well, let me tell you what they can't do first, what they shouldn't do. What you shouldn't do is attack them and say, you've got a freaking problem and I'm putting you in a center right now and you've got to get help. Because first of all, if you're an alcoholic, you're going to get to that rock bottom moment. Okay. You're going to end up doing something that you finally just wake up the next morning and say, I am sick and tired of living like this. Yeah. What you can do is talk to them and say, do you want to talk about this? I've seen some things. You might not be struggling. I don't know. You may be okay. But if you approach someone with love and compassion and don't attack them, if you attack them, you will immediately put them on the defense.
Yeah.
And they will run from you. They will run from you. That's why I said, I wouldn't suggest how it was done with me. My mom and my sister, I was estranged from them for many years because of how they did this. I'm now on now things are better. But you really need to handle it with kid gloves. I've been asked that question a lot. One thing I think with parents, it's just a very hard road because you don't want to enable them. You you have to be very careful. You have to be very active in your children's lives. You have to be active in your spouse's life. You have to know what they're doing. When they start doing things that is weird, like, and I don't even want to say X, Y, and Z, because I have teenagers. Okay. My teenagers sleep till 1:00 in the afternoon, thank God. And none of them have a problem with anything. It's just me and a teenager,
That's right.
So I don't want to, because, and you can talk to people who are much wiser when it comes to red flags and things like that. But I can tell you, when it came to me, I needed someone, like my husband, like the members of my church, who came around me and said, we will love you until you can love yourself. I got help through a 12-step program, and I still go to meetings today, because some people don't need it. I do, because I need a group of sober people who can tell me that A, I'm not always right. Okay. B, I don't have to always be right. And C, all I need to do today is not drink. That's it. That's all I need to do.
Yeah.
And if all I do today is don't drink and go through my nightly rituals, and I do go through nightly rituals. I mean, I talk to God every night and every morning when I wake up. When I wake up in the morning, I say, thank you for giving me life in my body again. What would you have me do today? Tell me what I can do to serve you. Tell me what I can do to make things better for other people. When I go to bed at night, Mark, I review my day. I said, did I say something that wasn't appropriate? Did I say something that I shouldn't have said? Did I say something that the old Amy would have said in her alcoholism addiction? Or did I say something that the new and sober Amy would have said? And if the answer is you said something that the old alcoholic Amy would have said, then I owe an amends for that. And I need to go to that person and I need to make an apology. And I need to say, I was wrong for saying that to you. I was wrong for jumping to conclusions. There's a level of respect and kindness that we have to live as people in recovery.
Yeah.
I mean, there is a tools for living, so to speak, and it's being kind and being tolerant and being loving and being not judgmental. And that's what we're to do as sober members of society, So that, I hope that answered your question. I kind of went off on a tangent there. But the program that I'm in has helped me so much. I'm just so passionate about it because, it saved my life. I mean, It has saved my life, and keeping in constant contact with other women and men in recovery has saved me. I mean, I went to the beach for the first time when I got sober with my husband and my 3 children, and I didn't drink. I had never been to the beach and not drank. Ever. I didn't even know people did it. Like, I literally legit did not know people did it. And you know what? Now I've been doing it for 11 and a half years. Like, it's an amazing new world to me, and I'm still seeing things that I'm like, oh my gosh, this is incredible because I'm sober.
Yeah. That's awesome. Well, this is such a big topic, and we could, I'm sure, talk for hours and hours about it. But unfortunately, as we're kind of running out of time, I want to ask you one final thing, and maybe we'll have you on again to talk more, because there's so much more to this, and I don't want to minimize that in any way. But just for anyone who might be listening or watching right now who maybe they're still carrying these chains of addiction, maybe they're still struggling or they're having this issue, especially if they're older and they're probably, frustrated with I thought I'd be in a different place by this time in my life. I thought I'd be better. I thought I'd do this. I thought I'd do that. What would you say to that person who might be a little older, struggling with some of the same things? If you could kind of say one thing to them, what would you say to them?
God loves you, and he wants you to live your best life, and he wants to break those chains. And if the chains of addiction are holding you, just allow him to break them, because he can do it and he can perform miracles. And there's not a shadow of a doubt in my mind that he is why I am sober today. Well,
that doesn't get any better than that. That's great. I'm so thankful for you saying that.
Thank you, Mark.
Well, how can people get a hold of you if they want to reach out, if they want to have you come speak, if they want to learn about what you're doing? Is there a, tell us that.
So I'm everywhere. I'm on Facebook. I'm on LinkedIn. Amy Speropoulos. I'm on X. I'm on TikTok. Amy Speropoulos. Amy Sperop TV is TikTok and Instagram. I'm pretty easy to find. If you spell, even if you spell my last name right, I Google myself. I know that's crazy, but we do that sometimes in TV just to make sure that everything's cool. But if you spell my name right, even if you spell it wrong, you'll pull me up. So I'm pretty easy to contact. Okay.
Well, I'll put that in the show notes. And if someone wants to connect with you,
please
to follow you or DM you or whatever, I'll put that in there for them. And again, thank you so much for your willingness to share and your transparency.
Thank you, Mark.
I know it's encouraged some people and given some people hope today, whether they're the one in the problem or they have friends or family who are struggling.
Absolutely.
I love to be reminded that God can and will save people. He will do miracles. He will change lives. You're 100%. A great testimony of it. So thank you for doing that.
He is the ultimate healer. Thank you, sir.
Man, I hope you got as much out of that as I did. I thought that was an incredible interview, and she just has such a colorful life and such a great way of describing things and talking about what she's gone through, and what an inspiration to anybody who's dealing with that in somebody they know. What a great resource. So how to contact her is going to be in the show notes like we talked about. If you want to reach out to her to be a speaker at an event or just to reach out to her for personal encouragement. But man, she's the real deal, and what a great encouragement to all of us. We got some amazing episodes coming up. I'm really excited about some things that are happening in just the next few weeks. We have Richard Mobley. If you've been a long-time listener, Richard was one of our first guests and one of our most listened to episodes, and an incredible amount of wisdom coming from him. He's my coach, my executive, and kind of my life coach in some ways. And he's got some things specifically we're going to get into this time. It's a little different. I can't wait for you to hear that. We got some other incredible guests lined up. Rusty Hicks is another person who's going to be on soon, who's going to talk about making a major change later in life in your 50s, and sort of the process he's in the middle of right now, going through from leaving a career that he had and a ministry job that he loved, and now what God has next for him, and this process of in between and how he's kind of dealing with that. That's going to be really helpful for a lot of us. And we got some other great guests coming on their heels. So make sure you tune in every week to the Age of Lions. Thank you for being here with us, and we will see you soon.